The bids are in. The gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast. They got all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. My name is Jeff McGurn. I'm on the WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is Paul, the Stewart of Suave Walker. He is our wine expert, and that's his nickname, Stewart of Suave. Paul, welcome to the podcast. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about the auction that just ended last night on Sunday, April 14th, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to talk about what we saw happening, some of the interesting movers and shakers. I want to start off with the biggest movers. Actually, here's what's interesting. The biggest mover, do you know what the biggest mover is? You care to take a guess?
Well, what is mover anyway? What does that mean?
That means the wine that had the biggest increase in value.
Oh, I see. Based on like where it started and where it hammered.
As a percentage. Percentage.
No, I actually have no idea. Tell me.
150% increase for the non-vintage Taittinger Brut La Francais.
Really?
Yes, went from started at 40, went to $100 for 150% increase.
Now, is this one of those like early releases that you cannot find anymore, even if you wanted to? It'd be like impossible to relocate unless you found some dusty retailer somewhere in Europe that had an older version or something.
I don't know. Like I'm looking at it, didn't look all that old to me, but
okay. No, it is. It is.
Is this one like super? I was gonna say, but you don't look all that old to me. And so
no, this is an older, definitely an older release, and of course,
or maybe I'm looking. This one does look older. Yeah, I was thinking.
Really hard to know when. It's actually really hard to read the back label, and of course, back then they didn't give you much in the way of information about disgorgement or blending or anything. So that's a tricky one, but that looks to me, I mean, that's very old school. So it's in fantastic shape. The capsule and everything, the foil is like, it's remarkable.
It's beautiful. Coming in second for an increase of 114.29% is this 2021 Domaine Benoit Moreau Chassagne-Montrachet, which started at $70 and ended up hammering at $150. So
really?
Yeah, saw some movement there. I thought that.
Wait, let me look at this Moreau. That is curious. So that looks like another sort of hot wine. I wonder if the venerable William Kelly did a write-up about Benoit Moreau, because I've noticed that a lot of these wines that he's been discussing over the last few years have just exploded in the secondary market. And so this looks like another example. Well, it's interesting, actually. The advocate score wasn't that great. It was an 89 to 90. It looks like a barrel score for the Village wine, but people must have really wanted to go after it because, that's more than doubled. That's impressive.
That's pretty crazy.
We've never sold it before. I mean, it's a fairly new release, if you will, in 21. So we haven't sold it before, but I don't think we've sold much in the way of Benoit Moreau wines, period.
No.
In fact, the 21 is the only vintage from for the Chassagne, for the Village Chassagne anyway. So that's interesting. Well, we'll have to keep our eye out for these for other wines from Benoit Moreau.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if we continue to see these come into auction and then like what happens with them, right? Is the market going to continue to adjust? Coming in at number 3 for 105% increase in value would be that 2016 Tenuta, Delle, and Terre, Nere, Etna Rosso.
Cool. It's just the pre-phylloxera version. That's one that people like to go after a lot, but
2016 to
it's just the straight
20 to 41.
This is straight Etna Rosso. It's the like
it's whatever,
if you will.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
I thought it was fascinating to go from 20 to 41. I mean, look,
you know what? Got a giant spectator score though, so that might have pushed it.
It's possible that the spectator score pushed it. This is one I love me some Nerello Mascalese. The stuff is absolutely delicious. But
it's your thing.
It's my thing. 6 bit.
Well, because so the 18 the 18 went for 25 and the 2020 vintage went for 20. So I think it's probably due to release date and spectator score. That's
Probably
my
due to release
guess
date
on
and
that one.
spectator scores. I think you're probably right there. 88% increase on a 2007 Woodward Canyon Charbonneau.
Yeah, so that's a variety that is not necessarily, well known, at least not by me. And Jeff always calls me an expert, but I'm not.
I think Charbonneau is about to have its renaissance, Paul. It is the time for Charbonneau.
Well, this is a sort of a classic WineBid example of something you will not or cannot replace, even if you have all the money in the world.
Yeah.
And if you went to the winery, they'd probably be like, "07 Charbonneau? No, like that's gone. That was gone 20 years ago. Forget it."
You'd be like Charbonneau, they'd be like Gesundheit.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, for Woodward Canyon too, they're not, it's a very well-respected producer, obviously, but the wines are not expensive at auction. And yeah, I'm kind of mystified.
I don't know. After hearing this podcast, I think like literally right now, while people are listening to this, you've got winemakers in Napa that are running out to the vineyards and ripping vines out to plant Charbonneau because they're like, it's the next big thing. Like Woodward Canyon, 88. Like, can I increase the price of my wine 88.57%? Possibly if it's Charbonneau. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Also coming in with some interesting increases. This non-vintage Ulysses Colline Le Malion Blanc de Noir Extra Brut L14/1. That went up 84% from 130 to 240 after 6 bids. So some movement there. That was interesting. Also jumping up, our old buddy, may he rest in peace, Sean Thackeray, 2011 Hosfeld Vineyard Cabernet Franc. That went from 55 to 101 for an 83% increase.
Wait, wow. That I've never seen, actually. And I do want to say or make a statement because I think that it's actually quite ironic that I mentioned, you calling me an expert and me saying that Charbonneau was a variety, because I don't think it's a variety. I think it's actually a district in Oregon, even though the wine is in Washington. So I have to do some research on this, but I did want to mention that it appears some of the Charbonneau releases from Woodward Canyon are 100% Merlot, and some of them are blends of Cabernet Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot.
What is Charbonneau? Charbonneau is a grape, another name for a French wine grape.
No, dude.
Noir or Del Château Italian wine grape that is also known as Charbonneau.
But if you look at Woodward Canyon specifically, the Charbonneau wine that they make is a blend. It's a Bordeaux blend. That's the thing. It's a Bordeaux blend. It says like Woodward Canyon. I'm looking at the designation right here. It says like Woodward Canyon Charbonneau Red, and it's made of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Franc, and Petit Verdot. It's not. It's so you're saying it is a variety, but it's also like a brand name for Woodward Canyon's Bordeaux blend.
Okay, this is very confusing then.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're right. It says Cabernet, 57% Cabernet Sauvignon, 43% Merlot. But Charbonneau is a grape, Dan.
Yeah, so I thought it was a grape variety. That's why I mean, I was like, wait a minute. I believe this is like an actual, I know Charbonneau is a grape variety that's spelled differently than Charbonneau, the Woodward Canyon wine, but Charbonneau is like CHARBONO, and this is CHRBONNEAU. So anyway,
I mean, no, literally, according to the internet, and the internet does not lie. Charbonneau is a grape, CHARBONNEAU.
Okay,
grape. Another name for French wine grape, Douce Noir, DOUCENOIR.
Okay, so with the Woodward Canyon spelling, it is a variety, but their wine is a Bordeaux blend. Okay, that's really, really weird.
Yeah, Woodward Canyon, we demand that you work this out because this is very confusing. Maybe, who knows, maybe those people were like, they really love the Charbonneau grape, and then they're going to get it and they'll be like, this tastes just like Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot at a 57 to 43% ratio.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. It's kind of cool because you're bringing up examples that are extremely rare, right? And so like this Cabernet Franc from Thackeray, it's another one I had to look up because I've never ever seen this wine before.
Cabernet Franc's a grape. It's a common grape.
Okay,
in a lot of regions.
All right.
I can't believe you've never seen that before.
We got that. No, I'm saying the Berlinus version, the Thackeray wine. So we've never sold this wine before. We've never had any other vintage of this wine in auction. So that's exceedingly rare. Like that's a complete one-off. And that's cool. Really I'm always into stuff like that.
I'd be super interested to try that and see how that is. So,
yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, his wines were built to last. They're and this is from Napa somewhere. So that's very cool. That's a really, really rare one.
This 1985 Casa Vinicola Piemontese Barolo Cerrequio, that one from 30 to 50.
Cerrequio. And there were a bunch of them. 13 bottles.
A bunch of them, and they just jumped up. And then, I mean, we saw some, I mean, we thought we'd see this. We were talking about this last week, the 16 Domaine de Roche Chevry Chambertin.
Oh yeah. I think I was telling you about those wines. I was
you were.
Du Rocher, or these Du Roche. I don't know. I've got to look and see if there's an
I think.
Over the E. Yeah, Du Rocher. These wines are great. And I thought they were steals, and others thought the same thing.
The 15 Biondi Santi Tenuta Il Greppo Brunello de Montalcino, that went up 60% from 165 to 265. Woo!
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I saw that we had some marketing material about this wine. There was an email that went out in the middle of the week or late in the week about how accessible these wines tasted, and that actually caught me by surprise. I'm like, oh, that's really wild. I had no idea, because I thought these wines needed like 40 years before they were really approachable. But apparently, they're drinking. They're showing well young. So I'm impressed with that. That hammer.
But here's the thing, though. Like in July, we sold this wine for $165. In June, it was $160 and $160 respectively. Right. And 160, but it's like hovered 160, 170, 165, 160, 165, 170 for a long time, for years. And then it just jumps up to 265.
Yeah. I wonder though, if it's because it was around, you know what I mean? Like there was a fair amount of it when it was for sale last year. There were quite a few bottles available, and then it just went away for not quite a year. So I think it's one of those things that just hasn't been in auction for a while. I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious to see if it got bid up much beyond where it is now, for unless it disappeared again for another year and pushed over 300. But it did get tremendously high scores. I don't know if maybe the scores came out later. Who knows? But that's a good question.
Let's talk about some really interesting stuff that was in auction. That was in auction and sold last week. A few things I wanted to mention before we talk about our weekly winners. 3 liter of 2013 Dechem sold for $14.50. Woo! That's a party bottle.
Yeah,
that is a party bottle if I've ever heard of one. But I thought that was really interesting. This 75 Dom Perignon Enotech Commande Special had 2 bids, taking it from 1560 to 1760. Wow. That was really interesting to see that 75 sell.
And then that's sorry, what was the designation for the 75? Was it one of the
Enotech
Commander? Yeah, so I think it had a fairly recent disgorgement. And by recent, I mean like within the last 10 years or something.
It looks like the disgorgement was 2007.
Okay, so yeah, not super recent, but for 75, that's a long time to be settling in the caves there. That's pretty cool.
It looks in beautiful shape.
Yes, yeah. So that's a rare one. That's a super rare one.
It's rare, but this bottle sold in January 2019. It sold for $950. So that's a pretty big move over the course of 5 years, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a big increase. Good luck finding another one of those.
Yeah, good luck. I thought it was interesting that we had a mag of 2013 Salon sell.
There was 12 and 13 in last week, and the mag, those are not easy to find. Again, speaking of rare, and 13 epic vintage. So that's a very collectible bottle.
Don't screw up sabering that bottle because it's hard to replace. Okay,
just don't risk doing that at all. How about
or just don't saber it, don't saber it. And then there's the 97 Stag's Leap Wine Cellars Cask 23 3-liter sold for $610. I thought that was cool. We had
it's still not a bad deal.
No, that's not a bad deal. 61 Angelus. Had two bids sold for $600. I thought that was kind of an interesting one.
That was one of my picks last week, and I think the bottle was in pretty darn good shape. But
it had the bottle was in pretty good shape. The label, I feel
it was cherry.
The label it's
cherry. Yeah,
the label looked lovely. The fill level was, maybe
it's 61. That's not wild.
That's not bad. And the juice, at least from the photo, looked pretty decent. I mean, I thought, and the capsule looked good too. So I don't know. I agree with you. I thought that looked pretty good, but it was interesting to see that sell after a couple bids. 3-liter of 82 Brain Cantonac sold for $550 after 3 bids.
Yeah, that was another one of my picks for an 82. I mean, not a first growth by any means, but definitely a fun way to, especially if you got a couple friends together, you pool together your money and try an 82 Margaux that's in 82 wine from Margaux that's in a large format that's aged well in good shape. That's kind of fun and again, not easy to find something at that age and that format for that kind of price.
The bottle didn't look too bad either.
It's good shape. You see a lot of seepage with some of these big formats, 3 liters especially. But this one, no seepage on it. Good, really, really nice fill. Great condition all around.
The last one I'll bring up before we talk about the weekly winners and wrap up is this 1934 Reserve des Caves de la Renée. Chambois Moussigny. 1934. 1934 bird.
And there I want to say, were there a couple wines from this Cave collective or whatever it is. Of course, now I'm looking for it and I can't find it. But there was another a later vintage, I think. Is this Reserve de la Cave de la Reine Pédoc Chambon-Musigny? There was another vintage of the same wine.
There was, and what's interesting to me, first of all, it actually looked, the fill level looked pretty good, and the bottle looked in pretty good condition for being that old, right? Like, I mean, you're talking, we're talking 90 years old. So, somebody probably bought this for a 90-year-old friend of theirs. Right. Someone turning 90 this year. Great gift if you can find a bottle of 19.
Seriously.
And the condition looked really, I don't know. I thought the condition looked really good. So interesting to see that.
Yeah, it's true. And we've sold a few. I looked it up. We've sold a few of these in the past.
We have 2016. We had a bunch of, or actually, no, there was one in 2016 that. No, we sold a bunch in 2016.
Yeah. I looked at this bottle actually with one of our inspectors. And it's interesting because the label is made to look very old. So I think it was probably labeled much, much, much later and or imported, into the US some point maybe in the 70s. It also has this really funny note on it on the capsule. It says, due to its age, this wine has been decanted. And so I think it was probably, recorked or reconditioned or something back in the 70s or the 80s before it was imported. But yeah, it's that's a very cool, anniversary, birthday or whatever bottle.
Selection Distingué John Dennis.
Yeah, John Dennis' distinguished selection
of John Dennis. Let's talk about some of the weekly winners, right? We've got 95 Mouton, $595, highest hammer in the last 12 months, right? Most recently was $370.
Yeah, and this is funny because, again, I think I had 95 Mouton as one of my Bordeaux picks. This was 2 weeks ago. I forgot we skipped a week because we were out of town last week. But It looked to me like this wine hadn't been in auction for a little while. Is that correct? I didn't do my research, but yeah, I guess it was okay. It was in last month at 545, and prior the month before in February for 545. So it is jumping up a little bit.
Yes, it's coming up. It's having its comeuppance, shall we say. 76 Diamond Creek Red Rock Terrace for 420. It's a high for us for the last 5 months. Most recent hammer we saw was from another auction house at 240 in July of last year. Mm-hmm. Interesting to see a bottle of Red Rock Terrace, get up.
Yeah, I mean, looks like many of the, sort of mid to late 70s vintage, well, forget earlier, 74 or something's going to be really expensive, but it looked like some of these wines from Diamond Creek, we've had a bunch of them recently, were relative deals per se, because the 78s always threw everything off because they were so expensive. And then, mid 80s vintages were kind of expensive, but that probably looked fairly reasonable initially. And now, it's kind of getting up there to where some of the other banner vintages from the 70s are hammering. So
04 Chitarale, El Zero Cabernet Franc, 455.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. 18 Edmond Vitin Sancerre Claw.
Claude. That nag sold finally. I mean, I guess it took a few weeks, but
it took a few weeks. For the 615 for this mag.
Yeah,
and 77 Grange for 550. That was interesting to see. Not to mention the 16 Rivers Marie B Terrio Vineyard Chardonnay sold for 111. That was a high.
Yeah, so this is wild. So yeah, Thomas is this is Thomas's own label. And it has to be the score. I hate to say that, but these wines are great. It's a great vintage. Cherry out Bridget's Vineyard out there in Occidental is phenomenal. But this wine has never sold for that much, never been pushed into 3-digit territory. So it's actually pretty exciting. I think that's very cool. I mean, it got a big, Jeb Dunnick score. However, the 17 got the same score and sold for 70. So I don't know what it is. Somebody just really wanted that wine. That's very cool. That's very exciting.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. So if you think this stuff is interesting, these wines are interesting, you can find them all on WineBid. Well, you can't find these on Wine because they already sold. Well, you might be able to find some of them, but not these exact bottles, right? So check out WineBid, see what else we've got at auction, and you may be able to find something rare and unique and interesting as well. And of course, if you listen to this podcast, you can get $15 off purchase of $150 if you use the code STEWARD, because Paul is the steward of Suave. So STEWARD. Use that. You'll get $15 off. For Finally Hammered, this has been Jeff McGurn and Paul Walker wishing you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.